Alright, so chapter 4 is all about language and communication, and really language is a very interesting tool. We should have learned from chapter 1 that language is actually an imperfect tool, in part because mental processes happen on two ends of that communication model. One person encodes a message, another person decodes the message. The encoding might have slightly different meaning behind it than the person decoding actually assigns to that particular word. So we're going to kind of explore why and how that happens with a little bit of discussion on language and communication. First off, we're going to talk about the concept of meaning. Now I'm going to make you think about meaning in a slightly different way than what we've probably traditionally been taught to think about meaning. A lot of us think that words have meaning, that words are something that we can find the meaning of in a dictionary, and that is where meaning actually exists. But I want you to keep in mind that what we mean here is that the word meaning is a verb. It's an action. It's something that happens within our minds. It's not actually something that happens on a page. We could have two people look up the exact same definition of a word in the dictionary, and both of them interpret the definition differently from each other, even though the language used for that definition was the same for both people, right? That's because each person comes to a communication situation with a different history, a different background. We've been influenced by different parents, by different teachers, by different environments. And we have different rules and expectations for communication, and when we encounter a word, we don't all hear them all the same way. So meaning is something that is inside of a person. And really everything else that's on this slide is sort of a repetition of that concept, but just said in a slightly different way. So when we communicate with someone, we're not really sending meaning. Instead, what we're transmitting is a message, and that's why communication is an imperfect tool, right? The third thing on this bulleted list, meanings are not in the message, they are in the message users. That's redundant. Number 4, words don't mean at all. Only people mean. Again, meaning being a verb. Number 5, people can have similar meanings to the extent that what we have are similar experiences. We come from the same culture, we speak the same language, we may have seen the same movies, we might have watched some of the same things happen in our lives and play out in our lives. So it's not that we completely misunderstand each other when we communicate, but sometimes coming to the nuances and understanding what a person actually meant is just a little trickier than we sometimes think it is, right? The second one from the bottom, number 6 there, meaning is also something that's never fixed. Not only do meanings change within us over the course of time as we gain experiences and knowledge, but also meaning changes within a culture. So meaning is something that's not really a fixed type of thing. As an example, think of the word love, right? When you were 5 years old, it probably meant one thing to you. When you were 12, it meant something different than it did when you were 5. When you're 19, it means something different than when you're 12. When you hit 30, it's going to mean something different than it did when you were 19. And when you're 50, it'll mean something different yet, right? And then the last thing on the slide says, no two people can have exactly the same meaning for anything. Well, getting to exactness is, sort of an unfair standard, right? I mean, we don't necessarily need to be 100% exact or precise with our histories and cultures and backgrounds, and it would be impossible for us to spend all that time getting to the exactness of meanings. But we can feel pretty confident that a lot of times when we've spent quality time with someone and we know them really well, that we're probably on the same page, even though we might not have exactly the same meanings. Hopefully what we find in life are people that we just enjoy spending so much time with that we don't mind doing the work that goes into communication, right? Because that is ultimately what this slide is telling us, is that communication is a lot of hard work. And in order to make a relationship work, we need to be invested in doing that work and hopefully enjoying that work in order to make the relationship work. So here are a few sentences that can illustrate how meaning can be a complicated thing. If we don't know the context for these particular sentences, then we might, of course, misunderstand what the person is saying. If someone says Picasso enjoyed painting his models nude, well, do they mean that he enjoyed to paint people who were wearing no clothing? They were nude, they were naked. That's probably what they mean. But it could also mean that Picasso enjoyed using the color nude, or it could mean that Picasso liked to be naked while he was painting. It's sort of impossible for us to know which one of those three things is the right answer unless we've contextualized, read about Picasso, and know something more about him. Visiting relatives can be boring. That's a little unspecific, right? Is it boring when I'm visiting them because when I go to their place there's nothing to do and so I get bored? Or is it boring when they visit me, right? Or is it boring both ways? Sometimes that could be the case, but you just don't know without asking some questions. The third one, my son has grown another foot. Is he taller? I hope that's what you mean, and that he doesn't have like a foot protruding out of the side of his abdomen or something. The fourth one, I saw the man with binoculars. Well, ask yourself this question. Who's the pervert in this particular sentence, right? I saw the man with binoculars. So are you saying you were holding binoculars and spying on people? Or are you saying that you saw someone who was being a creeper and who was like stalking people and looking at them with their binoculars? Right? So the language is a little unspecific and unclear. And the last one I have here, I cannot recommend this person too highly. This is one of those games that sometimes people will play when they write a letter of recommendation for someone that they maybe aren't overly enthusiastic about writing the letter of recommendation for. The words, I cannot recommend this person too highly, can sound positive, but oftentimes are intended to be read negative, right? I can't recommend this person too highly. If I put that inflection behind it, then you get a sense of what a person could read when they actually get this particular sentence in a letter of recommendation a little bit later. Language does work, though, because it is rule governed, right? Rule governed in the sense that we all have to follow these rules in order to make language work. Phonology or phonological rules are the rules about how a word is supposed to sound. So if I don't phonetically or phonologically pronounce a word correctly, I could be misunderstood. If I said I'm going to go home and feed my sate, when I meant to say I need to feed my cat, right, then people are going to be going, what's a sate? Right? So we have to obviously follow the phonological rules to be able to understand each other. Syntactic rules are rules about the structure of language and how that works within our particular system of say, English. We use very simple sentence structures that have like a subject, a verb, right, and a noun that follow it. So I went to the store. Okay. If I took those same words and rearranged them, the store went to I, it would change the meaning of the sentence. And so we have to follow syntactic rules in order to help give people clues about what we mean. And semantic rules are the rules about the specific ranges of possible meanings that we could be talking about by using a particular word. So if I said, I am going to go home and feed my cat, well, someone is probably going to assume, right, that my cat is a creature of the feline species because I mentioned the word feed and it's an action that I need to do for that particular cat or creature. But, if I was one of those people who called my significant other a cat, I need to go home and feed my cat, then that would change the meaning of it, right? Or if I owned a piece of construction equipment called a cat, maybe I'm going to feed it some diesel fuel. I don't know. And then pragmatic rules. Pragmatic rules are the rules regarding an appropriate context or situation. So since I'm going to say I'm going home to feed my cat, then generally people are going to assume that I've got a domesticated feline species in my house. It's probably not a lion, a tiger, right? It could be. And that, they may not know what type of cat it is, but given the rules of the social engagement, what we're talking about, they'll probably assume I'm pretty normal. I don't know why anyone would assume I'm normal, but... Okay, so clearly I am not normal, but that's okay. Just keep studying this chapter on language. Make sure you check out the materials that I've posted on Angel. There's a nice link to an article there and another video that actually gets a lot more in depth on the psychology of meaning and how it works within our brain. That is all for now, and I will see you again next chapter.